I found, of course, that there had long been investigations into this strange kind of ufological phenomena, and it was a fully developed modern myth, a fully developed body of mystical, if you like, experience. Mystical experience on one end, at one end, and concrete experience, if you like, from pilots and policemen at the other. And I came across official Royal Air Force and United States Air Force investigations into this phenomenon. And a book was written by Captain Edward Ruppelt, who was the head of Project Bluebook in the early 1950s. And he was in charge of flying saucer investigation for the United States Air Force, an official job with a staff and finances and resources. He was present on the amazing night in 1953 when Washington the Washington skies were invaded by lights that were maneuvering intelligently. The Air Force, I'm sorry to say, failed again, as it failed in 9/11, to intercept anything or to be on call. I've gone into the failure of the American Air Force in my book, An American Demonology, and paralleled it briefly with the utter failure of the American Air Force in 9/11. They don't seem to have the British fighter command to patrol up 24 hours consciousness. They think they're safe from any kind of assault. It's a Second World War hangover. And despite American technology and American management, the Air Force on the two occasions, 53 and 9/11, failed to intercept in any meaningful way. They came hours later with jet fighters, can you imagine that? The radar registered, there was a 3 radar registration of intelligently moving objects over Washington, plus countless civilian pilots' reports and reports from citizens. Now, it was Ruppelt's job to coordinate these different levels of perception. And he concluded, after nearly 2 years investigating, he didn't say as much, but he got near as near as a serving American Air Force officer can get without being arrested, to saying that this was an invasion of intelligently controlled vehicles from an unknown origin, which passed through every single defence that America had at the time. And he wrote a book called The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects. It was published after he left the Air Force. He was a reserve officer. Now we're talking about someone, Captain Edward Ruppelt, who had a very steady nerve and who was a very, very rational person. He was technologically trained, he had a degree in aeronautics, and you respect someone who's been in the perspex nose of a B-29 off Tinian Island in 1945, parked on the runway 3 feet away from Enola Gay, and he saw the Fat Man and Thin Man nuclear bombs being loaded there. He was a navigator, and he flew with them, and he on endless bombing missions against Japan. Now, when you take a man who's had that level of, if you like, mythological psychic experience, and he didn't actually go on the bombing missions, but he was close comrades and friends with the people who did. And he says something, you listen to him. You listen to him, yeah, because he's seen something almost inconceivable. It's rather like speaking to people like bomber pilots, such as Leonard Cheshire, who saw the devastation in European cities. You listen to them, people who've gone through that kind of experience and seen this devastation, and so they've seen something, you know, as I say, out of Dante's Inferno. So when they say something you pay attention. And when Captain Ruppelt says, you know, we're being invaded from outer space, you accept it for all its implications. Yeah, and this is in the early 1950s. And the story of Captain Ruppelt is in my book, American Demonology. The book is of value from another point of view. He was a serving officer, and as such, his book is a rare sight into his book is a rare insight into what Eisenhower at the time called the military-industrial complex. A famous phrase from president, not general. He was generalized now, and then he became president. He used this phrase, the military-industrial complex. Now, the military-industrial complex is Kafka's castle. It's very difficult to penetrate in this sense. It's a fully fledged version of Kafka's castle, the novel, its authority, it's removed from society, and it's a book by a serving officer who is inside, at the centre of the military-industrial complex in terms of the Air Force. As a unique event. It has no parallel. And you see how the military-industrial complex works as metaphor as well as technology. You also see, because this is the 1950s, how open a society America was at the time compared with what it is now. You could still take your newborn to a nice looking silver fighter on a grass runway and have your photograph taken by it. Yeah, try it now and you'll be dead. The prototypes were wonderful, sexy, glamorous things. They came out from factories, silver, like silver magical emblems. The nation took pride in them. The nation was the American nation was proud of them. They were an integrated part of American society. The prototype stood there, and Disneyland made money, Boy Scout associations made money, cigarette card manufacturers made money out of these beautiful silver, magical, sexy, ethereal things. They were warplanes, yeah, but they were still glamorous things. The prototype has now disappeared. It's now nasty, an offensive thing. It's buried in pits at midnight in Area 51. In other words, the change from apple pie innocence and these beautiful silver things, they've now become nasty, devious, conspiratorial, black bats, impossibly expensive creatures buried in toxic pits at midnight because you can't break up the stealth material in any other way. And so this is wonderful. So in my book, I've focused this in terms of Ruppelt's experience and seen this long kaleidoscopic pull from the early 50s to the present day. And that's what an American demonology is about, so you better buy one, it's all very exciting. All right.